Goliath Griffin woke up in his luxurious 4-bedroom apartment on the Upper West Side. Before his wife and kids were up, he had his morning coffee and a shot of freshly pressed orange juice with a splash of ginger, as he slipped into his dark blue suit and was out the door. Goliath got his copy of the Wall Street Journal from the newsstand by the gate. This was the paper that he had read since he was no more than a kid, and the paper that he believed had set him on the lucrative path to becoming the fund manager he now was. As Goliath reached his office on Wall Street, he turned on his computer. Immediately, a large and pulsating red alert sign covered the screen. Goliath very well knew what that meant, and he hated it. It meant that one of the companies in the portfolio he was managing had propelled beyond the 5% limit. His fund had an explicit rule against anything making up more than 5% of the total. It was Goliath's position in Microsoft that had set off the alarm. Trimming his position in Microsoft was something he had gotten quite used to during the last year, as the company had outperformed the market by a great deal. The company was transforming its business model. Previously, it had been focused on one-time purchases, but now it has successfully implemented a subscription service. Goliath and the stock market loved it, giving the company a steadier income stream with even higher margins. Little did Goliath know that on the other side of the transaction that Monday was the private investor David Dixon. David had reached the same conclusion as Goliath in his analysis of Microsoft, but without the 5% rule. David had initially bought stock worth 10% of his portfolio, and even as his position was growing, he didn't want to sell due to some made-up rule. For both Goliath and David, Microsoft had been one of their strongest performing stocks for the last couple of years. Now, Microsoft was living up to David's and Goliath's bull case, and both thought the stock deserved higher multiples on its even higher earnings. Yet, the two men's actions ended up in opposite ends on the spectrum. Goliath sat and trimmed his position, while David was adding to his. This wouldn't be the last incident during the week when Goliath felt he had to do something that went straight against the best interest of the owners of his fund. A new day, another glass of orange juice with a splash of ginger, and another copy of the Wall Street Journal. On page 11, Goliath found an article about a company named Juicy Gin. No, it had nothing to do with the spirit gin, but instead ginseng root-infused energy drinks that claim to increase memory capacity and energy levels. They also seem to have a less advertised effect on increasing sexual desire. A few weeks back, Goliath tried the drink at Nordstrom while shopping for new suits. Juicy Gin had a booth just outside the store, from which they handed out small drink samples. Goliath remembered it because he had liked it so much. He had returned and bought a 6-pack named Icy Dragon. Goliath found that the drink helped him reach a zen-like flow while working or reading, while also having a slightly invigorating effect on his marriage. When reaching the office, Goliath set out to see if Juicy Gin could fit in his portfolio. His train of thought went something like this: great growth? Check. Being able to bootstrap its own growth due to high profitability? Check. Reasonable price? Check. Ah, no! Only a $500 million valuation? The fund that Goliath was managing was called Small Cap Alpha Pro. As the name implied, he was supposed to invest in small cap stocks, those with valuations of about $250 million to $2 billion. However, also as the name implied, the fund had been generating a lot of alpha or overperformance during the last few years, which meant that it had grown in size tremendously. More capital meant that the positions in small caps were no longer able to move the needle for the fund as a whole, and therefore he couldn't focus too much of his attention there. Weeks of due diligence to allocate less than a percentage point of his assets simply wasn't time well spent. That the fund had grown so large had started to become a real issue. Goliath knew that some of the best opportunities existed in small, underanalyzed companies. However, as long as his AUM, or assets under management, were growing, Goliath's boss was happy. And his boss didn't seem to care much about the hypocrisy of managing a fund named Small Cap Alpha Pro that invested primarily in Fortune 500 companies and was having more and more difficulties in beating its benchmark. His boss had told him, When the ducks are quacking, Goliath, you feed them. Goliath surely didn't mind the swelling paycheck, but he couldn't help but feel that he was cheating somebody.
Fuck the clients. Your only responsibility is to put meat on the table.
The private investor David had also been to Nordstrom. He too had tried the samples, ending up buying a 6-pack of Icy Dragon. He too decided to have a look at the listed companies. Great growth? Check. Being able to bootstrap its own growth due to high profitability? Check. Reasonable price? Check. Ah, yes! Only a $500 million valuation? Could this be the next monster beverage I have been looking for? Upon closing down his computer on Tuesday, Goliath thought to himself, well, perhaps juicy gin doesn't amount to anything. And if they do, how can their margins not be eroded by competition? As he exited the building, he finished the last slurp of his Icy Dragon, and suddenly felt how he longed for wifey. Damn it! This thing is going to sell. Whoa! Oh, that's not the alarm. 5 a.m.? Oh, who's calling at this time? This better be important. Goliath speaking. Who is this?
Hello there, this is Sven. Me and Stefan were just having some fika before lunch here, and Stefan asked me to call you on his behalf.
Stefan? You mean Mr. Johansson from Sweden? As in the largest owner of our fund?
Yes. I manage the family office of Stefan, and he doesn't want to be rude or anything, but he says you're holding on to the same stocks as before the market went bad, and that he doesn't want to pay a management fee to someone who doesn't actually manage.
Sorry, but some of these stocks are now a better opportunity than they've ever been. Why would Stefan...
Sorry, Stefan has something else to say.
Säg det vi kom överens om. Att vi funderar på att byta till Goldman om man inte gör något.
Låter inte det lite väl otrevligt?
Han tar inte personligt, Sven. Det är bara affärer.
Sorry, Stefan wishes to tell you that if you don't take action, we'll take our money elsewhere. I wish you a pleasant lunch. Bye.
Who was that?
Oh, just another disturbed fund owner. When Goliath entered the office that day, he couldn't help but hear Sven's voice echoing in his head.
Take action. Take action.
Goliath pondered this for a minute or two, but kept coming back to the conclusion that a drawdown in the portfolio wasn't in itself a reason for action. But Goliath was getting tired of all the complaints directed towards him due to his underperformance these last 6 months. And Sven's family office made up almost 10% of the fund's AUM. Losing him would be bad for the firm and for Goliath's yearly bonus. How can they not understand that no investor can always beat the index in every time frame? Sven is supposed to know what he's doing. How come even he doesn't understand? Goliath would soon find a reason to do some reshuffling in his portfolio. In his inbox, an email with the headline "Window Dressing" appeared, and he was immediately called to his boss's office.
Welcome, Goliath. You know what time of year it is.
Yeah, there was still some daylight when I left the office yesterday, so I guess spring?
Yes, and that means quarterly performance updates. So get rid of those duds in your portfolio and replace them with some talk of the town. You and I both know the clients love to see that.
I believe I already have some of the best companies in the portfolio right now.
Yes, but you know, I got a call from Sven earlier this morning. The bloody Swedes don't seem to know that they're in the wrong time zone. And they weren't too happy about our recent performance. They said they've been eyeing Goldman Sachs' small cap alternative. We can't allow that. The quarterly report will be sent out next week. Have it done by then.
The private investor David also found the sour market slightly discouraging. He too liked it better when he was getting richer every day. But just like Goliath, David understood that his already cheap companies had only gotten cheaper. David had to spend zero bandwidth of his mental capacity thinking about other people's opinions and worries. And though David wasn't familiar with the terminology, there was never any need for window dressing. No one even knew what he was holding in his portfolio. Instead of shuffling around his holdings and paying lots of transaction fees, David practiced what Charlie Munger calls sit on your ass investing. Some of his favorite stocks had just gone from cheap to ultra cheap. In fact, maybe it was time to buy some more. Thursday had begun well for Goliath. No red alerts, no complaining fund owners, no nothing. However, as Goliath returned to his desk after lunch, a memo had been sent out to the whole organization, signed by the CEO himself. It read,
"The company has woken up, and we will be socially conscious from here on out. Before the end of the month, companies that don't portray great environmental, social, and governmental characteristics are to be disposed of, no exceptions. Say bye-bye to everything that has got anything to do with fossil fuels, gambling, non-Western countries, or the like. Over and out."
Frustrated, Goliath slammed his fist on the desk. Crap! That's at least 6 companies I'll need to dispose of. Cheap, fast-growing ones. As Goliath made his way to the coffee machine, he bumped into the CEO.
Sorry, I didn't see you there, Goliath. Did you read the memo? How did you like it?
I haven't really had time to digest it, but is it a marketing thing? Or have you disposed of your private jet?
Officially, enough is enough, and it's time we start contributing. But between you and me? No, I don't care about any of that crap. Weapons are cool.
I get it, it's another marketing tool, but shouldn't we let our results speak for themselves?
ESG as a marketing tool is foolproof. Just listen to this. Small cap ESG Alpha Pro. I think we could change the name of your fund to that. Anyways, see you tomorrow.
As he returned to his desk with a fresh cup of Java, Goliath felt a shiver through his spine as he remembered why he was to see the CEO again tomorrow. It was time for his quarterly performance review. Goliath suddenly regretted speaking in such an unfiltered way to his superior. Was he going to pay for this? Some 1,000 miles away in Omaha, Nebraska, the private investor David was keeping a close tab on a bunch of companies that didn't fulfill official ESG criteria. Some of them seemed to be sold in a hurry, and their prices plummeted because of it. David had been confused by the discussions about the moral of some of these companies. 2 years ago, people complained that companies producing weapons were evil. Now they said that the same companies were defenders of democracy. And he had heard that in Europe, governments were subsidizing electricity made from carbon emitters all of a sudden. David thought of himself as a simple man. When a company sold for less than what he thought of as its intrinsic value, he bought it. And right now, some companies kept being sold no matter how cheap they were. Efficient markets, my ass, David thought to himself. Goliath started his Friday morning with a couple of aspirins together with his juice and coffee. The quarterly performance review was approaching, and he had been underperforming his benchmark during this period. After his steak salad lunch, Goliath made his way to the grand conference room, where he knew all crucial decisions of the firm were made. He found the CEO sitting at the far end of the big oak table.
Have a seat, Goliath. We have been reviewing your performance, and putting it bluntly, it is not stellar anymore. Earlier this week, some bloody Swede woke me up in the middle of the night and tried to tell me in a polite way that he was thinking about switching to Goldman. We can't allow that. So, the strategy for the next year will be this. Hug the benchmark. Right now, we just need to stop the bleeding. You need to blend in with the herd. Get rid of those unconventional picks of yours.
If I do that, I'll just perform like the index. After fees, our clients will underperform.
Well, then so be it. Don't be so damn altruistic, Goliath. Just accept your 6-figure paycheck like the rest of us.
Goliath had heard about plenty of fund managers who had a strong career start only to fall like burning stars. He also knew that one never loses their job by losing the client's money in IBM, as the saying went. Besides, he was only 1 or 2 bonuses away from being able to take Cindy, Arnold, and Casey to the best Ivy League schools. Who was he to risk the future of his children? Just as Goliath entered a cab, he received a call from his old study buddy, David. Yes, That, David. Hello, you old bloke.
Cheers, mate. Has the week been good on you?
Wall Street is a complex place. I know you want to plan our upcoming fishing trip, but since you asked, I'm gonna summarize my week for you. It began with me selling my favorite company because everything is going too good for them. Like, what? How can that be an issue? I basically can't buy small caps anymore because the fund is now too big. Seriously, we should at least rename the thing. It feels like we're such imposters. Anyways, then I was forced to sell some of my cheapest holdings, just for window dressing. Never heard of it? Lucky you. Then I was forced to sell some of my other favorites because our gun-crazy private jet flying CEO suddenly cares very much about being socially responsible. No wonder I underperform. How can I not?
Gee, I finished my glass of wine there, but now I understand why I've been you this last year.
Yeah, don't you dare try to make any parallels to the biblical story about David and Goliath.
I'll spare you this time. But hey, 2 or 3 more bonuses and you'll be retired, I guess. Then we can start to compete on even terms. Now, what about the upcoming fishing trip?